and that murder shone from his eyes. He backed away as if frightened, and the man grinned and rushed him. Hagen lifted an arm to ward off the knife thrust and felt the sudden sharpness of pain even as he lifted his knee into his opponent's groin. The man writhed on the ground, an agony of twisting limbs, and Hagen coolly measured the distance and kicked him in the head. There was quiet. He stood breathing deeply and looking down at the still form, wondering if he had killed him and not caring. And then he turned and searched for the woman. She was standing in the shadow of a warehouse door. He moved towards her and said, "Are you all right?" There was a faint movement of the white-clad figure, and a soft voice said, "Please stay where you are for a moment." The voice surprised him, and he wondered what an English woman was doing on the waterfront of Macao at that time in the morning. There was more movement, and then she stepped out of the shadows and came towards him. "My dress was torn and I had to fix it," she said. He hardly heard what she was saying. She was only a girl, not more than 17 or 18, and she was not English, although from the purity of her speech one of her parents must have been. Her skin had that creamy look peculiar to Eurasian women, and her lips an extra fullness that gave her a faintly sensual air. She had a breathtaking beauty of the kind that is always associated with simplicity. She stood before him, looking gravely and steadily into his face, and Hagen suddenly shivered for no accountable reason, as if somewhere someone had walked over his grave. He moistened dry lips and managed to speak. "Where do you live?" She mentioned the best hotel in Macao, and he cursed silently, thinking of the walk that lay ahead of him. "Can I get a taxi?" she asked in her clear, bell-like voice. He laughed shortly. "In this part of Macao, at this hour? You don't know this town, Angel." She frowned, and then her eyes widened, and she reached forward and grabbed his arm. "But you're hurt. There's blood on your sleeve." He smothered an oath as the sudden wrench caused a stab of pain to run through him. "Take it easy," he said, and moved away to examine the wound under the light of the street lamp. His jacket had an ugly blood-stained slit in it, and when he wiped away the blood with a handkerchief, he saw that he had sustained a superficial slash, more painful than anything else. "How bad is it?" she asked him anxiously. He shrugged. "Not too bad. Hurts like hell, though." She took the handkerchief from his hand and twisted it neatly around his arm. "Is that any better?" she said. As he nodded, he saw that her dress was badly torn. She'd made a pathetic attempt to pin it together, but it hardly measured up to the usual standards of decency. He made a sudden decision. "There's only one way to get you back to your hotel," he told her. "We'll have to walk." She nodded gravely, and he added, "We'd better call in at my hotel. You can fix this arm properly for me, and I can get you a coat or something to cover yourself with." He nodded towards the bodice of her dress, and she seemed to blush, and instinctively put a hand there. "That seems the best thing to do," she said calmly. "I think we'd better hurry, though. That handkerchief is proving an inadequate bandage." He was surprised at her calm acceptance of his suggestion, surprised and also intrigued, because for a young girl who had just been through a pretty bad experience, she seemed remarkably unaffected. His hotel was only a quarter of a mile away, and as they approached it, he suddenly felt uncomfortable. As he held the door open for her, he reflected bitterly that the place looked what it was, a flea bag. A blast of hot, stale air met them from the small hall, and an ancient fan creaked slowly and uselessly above their heads, hardly causing a movement in the air. The Chinese night clerk was asleep at his desk, his head between his hands, and Hagen motioned the girl to silence. It didn't work. Halfway across the hall, a polite cough sounded behind them, and Hagen turned wearily. The night clerk, now fully awake, smiled in an apologetic manner. Hagen felt in his pocket and then remembered that he was broke. "Have you got a fataka?" he asked the girl. She frowned and looked puzzled. "I'm broke. Flat and